Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and we're going to see if we can do exactly that. Give somebody a second chance on a fishing reel. This reel was sent in by Dan. I did a little 1-minute video on it showing that the reason why this reel is not working is that it's got a bent metal side plate, and I think that's the only issue. We're not sure until we take it all off, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to remove the side plate. We'll see if we can turn this reel without the side plate being on there, and if we have to do some further action on this. We're going to rebuild the entire reel, but we want to do an initial diagnosis to see if it's going to make it work or not. This is a Pflueger Alpine. It's the number 2657. It's a beautiful saltwater reel, circa 1940s and 50s. It was before you went to those plastic side plates. This one's got the damage here and the corresponding damage over on this side where it's pulling it out. There's no question that the bend in this reel is stopping the spool from spinning, but we'll go and do all of that. But before we do, I want to take a moment to thank our first responders and essential personnel, everybody involved in keeping us safe during the pandemic. You know, this is just continuing to linger. It's taking its toll on everybody in the fields, as well as just everybody who's becoming impatient with all of the issues of the day. And it's a credit to them that they continue to show up for work every day and doing their best to keep people safe and to restore them to health. So all the uniformed services, everybody in medical, everybody who's delivering food and the like, everybody who's providing the essential services we need to kind of do a normal lifestyle in unnormal times, thank you very much. So I'm going to start by taking this line guide out. Now the good news with this is it doesn't appear that the line guide assembly itself is damaged. And like many of the Pflueger reels, like the Pflueger Rocket and that, you can remove this line guide without taking any of the other pieces off. The line guide is driven by a gear on this side, and so you can just kind of pull it out, and then it'll give us a little bit more information about what's really going on here. Sometimes the line guides are what's frozen in a reel, and that can cause you to think that it was something else, but sometimes it's just the pawl is jammed or whatever. And when you do your analysis, you want to try and cover all bases as you're doing it, and we'll see what we can do here. This should simply pull straight out, just like it did. Hey, how do you like that? Didn't make a liar out of me. I'm also going to turn this now and see that the line guide is moving. So it's not a question of a bad pawl or anything at this point. It's just a question that we've got a jam there. I do take all the pieces and parts. I put them into a parts tray. You will notice that I do wear a protective glove on my non-working hand. Kind of wish that I was able to do the protective glove on the other hand, but I just have a hard time with that. So we settle for half is better than nothing kind of a thing. Let's take this. I'm going to try first just loosening it a little bit. It's a little screwdriver I got along the way. I think my son-in-law gave it to me as a mechanic. It's just convenient in that you can lock in on it. You can use variable bits in it. And I like it because it has this cross hatching to it. So once you break the screw, you don't have to turn the handle. You can just kind of twirl it like that and get those screws loose. All right, I think those are the screws that are holding. I'm just going to back it off a little bit, and now let's see if it turns. Well, this is still pretty much locked up, so let's go ahead and just take the whole thing off now. When you take these screws off, place them on your bench. And when you do that, make sure that the screws are all the same. If they're not the same, notice where the long ones or the short ones came from, so that when you go to reinstall, you put them back in the same place. Right now we're 2 for 2. So as I turn the reel this way, we have a leather thumb rest here, and that's actually the drag system on this reel. There are no drags. The drag and the fighting pressure was provided by you cranking the handle, which is a knuckle buster handle. It goes back and forward, and it was also for you both in terms of slowing the spool during casting, as well as controlling the fighting of the fish. You would press down and put particular pressure on it and not wear your thumb out, wear the leather pad out instead. Those 4 screws are the same, so I'm just going to put them in a separate corner of my parts tray, much like I did those 4 small screws that belong to the other piece. And now let's see what we can do with this. All right, we've got this off. We're going to show you how we're going to attempt to bring that back to true. And let's turn it now, see if we can turn it. Well, we can. So there's the good news with this wheel. And once we get that plate secure, hopefully the spool didn't get bent out of alignment, and we'll work on that. So let's take that off. Notice that there's a spool gear here that kind of floats. And there's a square on this side and a round on, well, it's square on both sides, I guess, so it doesn't matter. Nope, that's round. All right, so the square side is going to come in here. That's how you're going to lock that onto your spool. Yep, I guess it doesn't matter which way that goes on. All right, I'm just going to put the spool and that gear off to the side for a moment. And let me tell you what I'm going to do, because we're not going to be able to show this on camera, but I'm going to use a vise as the first one. I mean, a natural inclination would be to take out a hammer and start banging. I don't think that's a good answer. I'm going to use a vise. I have a woodworker's vise in another area of my shop. We're going to go back and get it. So we'll just kind of use this one to demonstrate what I'm going to do. I like to use something that's softer than the metal. In this case, it's going to be wood. We're going to load that into the jaws of the vise. We'll crank it down, and we'll see if we can't press this back into flat. Well, we're going to know it's flat because I also have a heavy steel piece here that is flat, and we'll just make sure that it gets as close as it could. Now, it looks like I have to do that on both sides. It looks like I'm bent out here. I certainly am. I'm looking that the lip is out on this side. So we'll do that first, and I'm going to shut the camera off, and we'll come back and we'll see how we did with this. So this says it was patented. It just gives a patent number. I was trying to hope for a date, but I don't see. 1926 is the date on it, if I got that right. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I think it says patented, applied for in 1926. So this is an old reel. All right, we'll be back. Okay, so we're back. We were able to press the bend pretty much. There's just a little ripple here. One of the tools you don't see in my shop, I have a 1-inch thick by about 10 by 14 piece of solid steel. And that's been invaluable to me over time. Just turns out my father-in-law was a steel worker at one point, and I have no idea how he got it in his basement, but when it was time to clean up his basement, this was there, and we took it. So I just have a little bit of, I think, hammering to do. We're going to try a little hammer. Now what I'm going to use is a soft blow hammer, one of these that has the plastic tips. In no way do I want to mar this piece. If I really want to be safe about it, I'll put a piece of wood over the top of that and tap down. We're going to want to do it from a flat surface, so we're going to want to make sure as we do this that that side plate adjuster or the click ratchet or any of that stuff doesn't get in the way. And again, we're going to try and keep this as true as we could. Now the good news is the side over here that was corresponding to the big bend there, that pressed out with the vise by itself. I don't think I have to hammer that. We're pretty straight if you look at the edges there. And we can just kind of use this, and we can see that for the most part, this is squared up very nicely. And like I said, I might just be getting a little crazy here because as I look, that straight edge is pretty much keeping me flat all around here now. So there's just a little bit of it. I'm going to play with that. We'll be right back. Okay, I don't pretend that I got it 100% square, but I'll tell you what, for kind of a novice sort of a thing, I like that I don't have the gaps in almost every place where I put this down. So that's telling me we're pretty true. Now I can't tell you if it's skewed, that is going this way, right, from what I see. I do know I have a little bit of a ripple left where that bend was, but I think I'm largely going to be satisfied that the inner track here, which is where that spool is going to ride, is flush enough. All right, well, let's continue. Let's go do some more of this wheel, and let's see if we can't get it out there fishing again. So I'm going to start with some steel wool and some metal polish. In this case, it's an automotive chrome polish. It's Turtle Wax's version. I'm just going to come inside here and see if we can't clean that up. I don't know if this reel was patented in 1926 or manufactured in 1926. That's hard to say. I'm thinking it was probably made during the war, World War II, not one, and that it's a survivor. And as I said in that one little short that I did on this reel, if it had a story to tell, not only would you like to find out what caused the dent, but what caused the person to keep the reel after it was clearly damaged and probably beyond repair, or at least beyond the individual repairing that. I don't know, so we'll see. Innovative click ring, just 2 wire springs here. That click notch on there is pointy. It's hardly been used at all as a bait alarm, and it's currently set in the on position, so I'm going to set that to the off position. The only maintenance that needs to be done here is put a little bit of grease into that adjuster where the spool is going to sit. All right, we're going to consider that for now at least done. We're going to go over to this. I'm going to turn the camera off again. I'm going to use Flitz's polish. It's a metal pre-cleaner. And we're going to just spray that down on both sides. It's a good polish or pre-cleaner, and it usually does a good job without terribly disturbing the metal work underneath this, of getting that salt and that greening and that corrosion off. So that's Flitz metal pre-cleaner. I don't get paid by any of these folks. I'm just telling you that because well, I like the results. It's simple enough. Before I do that, I'm going to remove that because I'm going to work over a sink. The directions on this pre-clean is to spray it down and immediately wash it down with water. And I don't have that on my bench here, so before I start turning this in unusual ways and losing that gear, we'll go do that. Back in a moment. All right, it's less than a minute later. You can see that the white got knocked off. There's still some greening on there, so I'm going back to that metal polish. We'll put a little bit on there with our 4O. It's the least abrasive of the steel wools. We're going to go back with that. We're just going to see what we can do to get some of the more stubborn corrosion off. And while I'm doing this, this is a good time to ask you to subscribe to my channel. If you like this kind of video, if you like to learn how reels are made and repaired and problems diagnosed and the solutions to those problems, well, this is a good thing to do. Subscribe, and then once you're subscribed, go hit that notification button and you'll see the reels that I'm working on. I work on all kinds of reels. This happens to be a vintage reel, but I work on bait casters, conventional reels, spinning reels, freshwater and salt, and you can select on the notifications which ones you like, and go take a view and learn a little bit more about the history of the reels and how they come together, what their strong points and weak points are, and how to maintain them if you happen to have one of those. Okay, just going to shut this down for a moment again. We'll come back after the cleaning is completed, and we'll take the next steps. We're back, and the only thing that's happened since we turned that off was we applied a little bit of elbow grease using our steel wool and our chrome cleaner. We got most of it off. There's still a little rough patch or two there. That's just something I guess we're going to have to live with without getting grinders out and things like that. So the spool is done, and the other side is done, so I'll just put that off to the side for a moment. Let's come over to the worm gear assembly. This little piece should come out now. Let's take that, take the pole out. You want to use the right tool, and you want to respect that this thing has probably been in there a long time. There we go. So be careful as you take it out. You don't want to break anything. Let's take that pole out of here. This is quite the piece of engineering there. We want to just make sure that it's all clean and that it turns freely. And right now it's a little bit stuck in there because everything is sturdy, and that means when you get to the corners it's not going to turn very easily. So let's get that out of the way. Clean up the shoulders of this piece, the pawl. Check the angles on it. It looks a little worn, and I'm sure there's no replacement. We'll see what happens when we go to reinstall. Okay, we'll do that. We'll put a little drop of oil into the cap. put the ball back into that cap. Put that back in here. Tighten that up. I guess I should have left that out for a moment so that we can get the piece out. Let's go ahead and clean this up. Inspect the tracks of the worm gear. I just got some on a paper towel in there. If you get anything stuck, go ahead and use a hard bristle brush or some other, maybe a toothbrush or something. You can generally get all the stuff that's in the tracks out that way. This is nice and solid. Same thing here. If you have any issues with the main gear, just go ahead and make sure that it's clean, that all of the teeth are even. They are. And then we can go ahead and reinstall. We got to clean a little bit up the back tray of this. Want to put a little bit of grease onto the shoulder where it's going to ride in there. And we want to remember that this is on the right side of the reel, facing this way. So when you go to put this in, you want your line guide coming over the top here, like this. It's easy, very easy, to put it on the wrong side. So if you don't have your schematics, if you don't have your directions, if you're just doing this and kind of ad hoc, then what you want to do for sure is take pictures along the way. You want to make certain that you take them at critical junction points where you can determine that the positions of the parts are in a certain order or sequence in terms of how you remove them, and that'll help you with the reinstall once you go to put the reel back together again. Alright, I'm still trying to get this to the point where it's meshed into the grooves, and so it's a little bit of trial and error. Eventually that fork piece will wind up in the grooves the way it should. And that's the time when you can tighten it down all the way. Don't force it down ahead of time. You're only going to bury those points on the fork. And if you do that, you're going to break the pawl. And in this case, I have no idea where you get a pawl for a 80-year-old reel or so. There we go. All right, so we finally have it. You'll see it's kind of limping along there. I'm going to put that off to the side and the cover off to the side. And we're going to come over and pay attention now to the main. So I started earlier taking this nut off so it's loose. It wasn't loose by design. I'll take the handle off next. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 bars, and I think at this point it probably makes sense to put the other side back on so that we keep the orientation. So let's go ahead and do that. We've already put the grease into the bearing cap here. I'm going to just start these by hand. Again, you want to be sensitive to the age of the reel. Don't try and do anything that might damage the parts, because the parts are old and not available generally. This is the first Pflueger Alpine I've worked on, so it's kind of a certainty that they're going to be difficult to find if you happen to get one of these that doesn't work properly. That's probably what happened here. We had a situation where that side plate got bent, and I'm sure you just don't jump out on eBay and find a side plate for this reel. Beautiful reel. I'm thinking at the time the reel was probably a very expensive reel compared to some of its counterparts that were available out there. It's a Pflueger reel, so you had Ernest Pflueger and his 4 sons were making reels, and they were making them in Akron, Ohio. This one I don't think says, they say made in the USA. Again, I think it's more difficult at Yeah, it's hard enough for me to read that. Cool. All right, let's go to this side then. There's 4 screws on this side that correspond to the others. And I did that so I don't have to worry about these pieces and parts coming out, the cross posts, the reel seat and the like. I don't want to lose the orientation on that, particularly since this one took a pretty good swat to begin with. So if there's any hope that this thing is going to manage to make it back into circulation here, go fishing again, well, we want to take advantage. Sometimes if a cross post bends in a hit like that, at least it keeps the symmetry, and you go to put it in a different location and you start getting a bind. That's true of spinning reels in addition to the traditional reel that I'm working on here. Sometimes that rotor and the spool will take a whack, and if it's just in the right position, it doesn't chirp. But if you move the orientation of it, it does. All right, those 4 are the same screws. I'm going to leave them on deck because I think we're going to get done pretty quick with this one here. I'm going to take both the side plate off, cap off. That's what's holding that back on. Interesting. Okay, there you go. No big deal here, right? Direct drive, main gear. Main gear is going to drive the crosswind gear that we saw on the other piece. And then you have the spool gear, which is going to be on the other side of this piece. Going to be driven by that as well. So we have 2 gears. This one is going to sit in here like this, and that'll mesh. And then we'll have the spool gear that we saw on the other one mesh here. So this is just a light cleaning here. Let's go ahead and do that. When I'm working on old reels, I like to use the least abrasive of the options. In this case, the least abrasive is a paper towel. The rest of this is just tarnish. And you can, if you got a little stubborn grease, go ahead and just give it a shoot of some penetrating oil. In that case, I'm using a WD-40, but any penetrating oil will do. And just make sure you clean it. So we had a lot of dried grease there. All right, this is pretty easy. We're going to inspect it. We're going to grab our grease brush. I do use fishing reel grease. I use Penn's Precision Reel Grease. I recommend that you only use fishing reel greases on your fishing reels. Don't use automotive greases. You don't use fishing reel grease in your automobile, so don't use automobile greases on your fishing reels. Kind of simple and straightforward. All right, we just put that back together. We can clean the front of this. Again, you want to be aware that some of those cleaners out there will have a detrimental effect on some metals, so please be careful what you use. I'm just using a rod and reel cleaner here, and I'm doing my best to clean it up. And I want to preserve that patina for sure. I don't want to just make it to the point where it looks pretty but doesn't perform well. All right, I'm going to put a little bit of grease onto the main gear here, which is going to ride into the bushing here. So if you have questions on this reel or any reel in particular, and maybe you're working on one and you're stuck, maybe you'd like to know more about some of the older reels, whatever your question is, if I know the answer, I'll be happy to provide that to you. And the way to ask that question is to leave it in the comment section. That's the best way to do that all around. I generally have a chance to do that. Sometimes I know people are in rush when they're doing reel repair and they're stuck in things and they want to give me a call. Well, that's all well and good, but I don't get to the calls as fast as I get to the comment section. So just please be patient. If you do leave a voice message, please be patient. I do eventually respond to them. We have that spool. I'm going to start the reassembly now. We'll see how we do. See if all of this was worth it, or if it was a exercise in patience. Right now it's kind of turning. That's a good sign. If it was just an exercise in patience, but we're not going to get anywhere with that. Forgot to clean the back of this. Let's go ahead and do that as well. On this side, you can be a little bit more aggressive. It's not showing its face. And there is some very dried grease in here, so go ahead and do that. Make particularly sure that this channel is clear, because that channel is where the lip of the spool is going to ride. So make sure that it's nice and smooth inside there. Don't forget about that. We're going to put a little bit of grease onto the shaft for that. We did the same thing here. We're inspecting this gear. This gear's got some old dried grease in it, so we're going to try and knock that out with that brush. So much of real repair and real servicing is just inspecting the parts, cleaning them, and re-lubricating them. And of course, if you find a broken part along the way, well, that's the time you got to go replace. Sometimes the replacements are available, and it'll give you a test in terms of your ability to do a bush fix. But overall, most of the reels that are seized up or not working properly, generally the issue is that the reel has just got dried grease in it. Alright, we're trying to reassemble now. We're going to reload these cases. So much of reel repair is just patience. And as one of my friends told me a long time ago, and I've said on several of my videos, a good sense of humor. I think what I'm going to do here before I load that is I'm going to take this side and seat that, because that seems to be the problem here. And we can probably go back in without trying to fight 2 or 3 things at once here. If we got them all in, we should be able to press. Alright, we have a little bit of an issue here right now, but let's see if that resolves itself when we put the other screws in. Put the side plate screws in first. This is where I said I don't know if I have the side to side as an ability here. I hear a little chirp going there. That's what we're going to find out if it resolves itself when we put the rest of it in. It may just be that it's something that just needs a little bit more hammering, or it may be something that's so out of square that it's just not going to work properly. It may also be that side plate adjuster bushing is in too far, and that's what the pressure on that may be. We'll wait and see. I left these out before. If I didn't, I would be going to my parts tray, and that's where I would find the pieces and parts. So finally, if you have a reel that needs to be repaired and you're not up for doing it yourself, and you would like me to service that for you, well, I do repair reels by mail, and if you send me an email to the address on the business card that follows, I'll be happy to provide you with that reel repair information. Alright, we got this. We got to go load the level wind feature in, and we'll see how we do. Right now I just want to give this a crank, see if we're that bound up or not. Alright, well, we have a little bit of a bend. I'm looking, and it seems like the spool is just askew, so it looks like this side here needs to come out a little bit. And before I go too much further, I'm going to see if I can put this in, see if I can grab it with the... This may push everything back, and if that's the case, okay, put the 4 screws in here. You're kind of playing along with me here. This is kind of fresh turf for all of us, but I think what I have right now is I have a little bit of a bend facing inward on the side plate over there. So when it got whacked, it not only bent it in the one direction, it bent it in the second as well. And I'm going to go back to my woodworker's vise. I'm just going to see if I can't push that out a little bit. That was the one thing I was a little bit afraid of, was that it might be skewed inward. In other words, east to west versus north to south. We fixed the north to south issues. Now we got to fix the east to west. But before I do that, I want to just make sure that this comes in. And again, we've got it working now, which is interesting enough. But there's a skip here. And as I'm looking, it's very tight up top here, and there's a gap below. So what that's telling me is that this top end is bent in a little bit, which is where it took its blow. So we're going to shut this off. We'll come back and we'll see if we can't. Okay, so let's attach that handle, see how we did. I don't have a lot of trust and confidence that this one is going to fare very well, but you never know. I think everything we did is about as best as we can do. So let's tighten it up, see what happens to the project. This may be one of those that's it's got one more story to tell about the guy who was working on it to try and get it true again. All right, let's see what we did. Oh, we're turning. There's a skip, but you know what? It's working. I'm not sure what kind of adjustments can be made on this. That's smooth. All right. So it's hard to say when you don't know how the reel is supposed to perform. There's just a minor chirp. There still is a widening gap on the one side versus the other. I don't think there's anything we can do there to alleviate that. And there's a long way between the screw studs here, which if this is bending in, there's nothing that you can do to move that. But otherwise, hey, it's working. So Dan will have a reel from the 1940s, I'm thinking, although it was patented a lot earlier. I'm noticing that the spool seems to be a little bit out of true. But other than that, this reel is going. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you learned a little bit about it and saw, that we can bring reels back, even ones that are severely damaged. And I hope you stay tuned to watch more. So please stay safe, stay well, stay watching, and have a good day. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle.